Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab will deliver a speech tomorrow on the preparations for a no-deal Brexit. As we enter the most crucial part of the negotiations with the EU, it's time to examine in more detail exactly what a no-deal could mean. Who better to tell us than Sky's specialist correspondents and editors?
For 2 years now, Theresa May has promised that Brexit means Brexit, that Britain's taking back control of laws, money and borders. But what we've seen is indecision, infighting, resignations and rebellion. So what if this headline was true and Britain does leave the European Union without a deal? How will that affect everybody in Britain?
After all, this is an island nation, reliant on the flow of trade in and out of the country. So even if we continue to get our flowers tariff-free from Holland, there's no guarantee that customs officials on the other side of the channel will do likewise for our goods and our services. And that ultimately is the crux of the matter. Theoretically, life could just carry on as it has done in the past, but there's no domestic legal obligation for it to do so if we leave the EU without any kind of a deal. That means lots of uncertainty, which is why businesses are likely to cut back on investment and why the pound is likely to take another tumble, with implications for everything we buy.
No deal poses a huge challenge to the delivery of fresh medicines to hospitals and pharmacists, particularly time and temperature-sensitive products like insulin, crucial to the daily lives of more than 400,000 British diabetics, including the Prime Minister. But almost all of it is manufactured and imported from Europe. It's among the 75 million medicines that pass back and forth from the continent every month, and why ministers are planning to stockpile to make sure no one goes short.
What if you're one of the 1.2 million UK nationals living, working or studying on the other side of the Channel? Or one of the 3 million EU citizens in the UK? Will you be able to continue? A lot of work had gone into guaranteeing reciprocal rights for EU and UK citizens. But with no deal, it'll be up to individual countries to negotiate their positions. Don't worry, we're not going to have mass deportations. But people could have to get visas to travel, permits to work, and could face increased bureaucracy to stay on. And there's lots of worry about access to areas like healthcare and benefits. This isn't reality yet, but people are being warned life could get more complicated.
No deal is better than a bad deal was the Prime Minister's mantra before the plans for stockpiles, not just for medicines but for foods too, before the plans to turn a 13-mile stretch of the M20 into a giant lorry park for 2,000 vehicles, before the plans of the Customs Department essentially not to enforce border checks in order to keep traffic flowing, whilst Brexiters argue that all this is the same old scare stories, that they omit that no deal could mean no £40 billion Brexit bill. Negotiators don't want no deal, but by default, or even by accident, it could be where we're heading.
Now, in the coming hours, just 6 months before Brexit, we'll begin to learn what the government thinks a no-deal Brexit could mean for Britain's businesses and citizens. The government is to publish a series of papers on the expected consequences of leaving the European Union without an agreement. Our senior political correspondent, Jason Farrell, reports on what appears to be a political high-wire act.
And then very gently bend down, pull up the grey shoulder strap.
Strap up, get ready. The government's about to reveal how it's preparing the UK for the risks of no deal by releasing some of its 84 technical papers on the subject. The Governor of the Bank of England warned this month that the danger of a no-deal Brexit was uncomfortably high. So what happens if we step away without a deal? First, uncertainty for people like Anya, who works here at Zip Now, near Westminster. A Slovenian national, she's been in the UK for 5 years.
Mostly people are worried about the jobs, if they're going to lose it or not, or if we're able to get anything from the health system, or we're going to be part of the system still or not.
It's thought the no-deal paper on EU citizens will offer a continuation of their rights, but that's no guarantee for people like Simon that the EU will reciprocate.
I started my PhD just before the Brexit vote, and part of the PhD is based in Belgium. So we're moving to Belgium on Sunday, and we still don't really know what our position will be when we're living there.
Others at the zip wire had a range of concerns.
And what do they hope to happen? That it'll all just shake out eventually? Is that what the thinking is with a no-deal exit? I don't know.
Campaigners and hospital trusts fear that no deal could lead to shortages or stockpiling of medicines.
The moment you have different laws on either side of the border, suddenly you have to start checking lorries. Now that is why food security and medical supplies are now in danger.
The Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab says these concerns are a hair-raising scare story, but the leader of the opposition disagrees.
We would not countenance a no-deal Brexit because that would mean trade would then immediately move on to World Trade Organization rules. That would mean our manufacturing industries would be hit very, very badly immediately. Our supply chain would be hit very, very badly.
Many argue there's nothing to fear. No deal means we wouldn't pay the £40 billion Brexit divorce bill.
3, 2, 1.
Rather than a cliff edge, the no-deal papers will look to cushion the impact through conciliation. So if we don't impose tariffs, maybe the EU won't. If we ensure rights of citizens, maybe the EU will, even without the legal framework.
Dominic Raab says the EU needs to ensure that its citizens and businesses aren't harmed when the UK breaks away. And that requires a collaborative, non-disruptive approach. In other words, a sort of no-deal deal. And that really is a leap of faith. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP and Leave supporter John Redwood. Very good evening to you, Mr. Redwood. Well, what do you think about this exercise, publishing these papers? Is it a sign to the European Union that the UK is serious in its negotiations and is prepared to walk away?
Well, of course it is, and it's a very necessary exercise. I don't think there are any things that need worry us too much, but there are some things that the British government needs to take action in good time before we leave on March 29th next year, and I'm very pleased they're going to get on with it. I just hope that people don't use it to then run all these absurd scare stories. And this business that we won't be able to import food or medicines. We will control the access to our market through our harbours and docks. Why would we want to impose new barriers to stop importing medicines that we want to buy? There's no reason why we would.
Well, you hope people won't use it, but it seems they already are. And there are leavers who are saying, well, this is a continuation in a way of Project Fear.
Well, it is. It's grotesque.
So, well, is it valuable or isn't it?
It's worrying people. No, not the government exercise. I trust the government papers are sensible. I'll know when I've had a chance to read them. But there are people using them as an excuse to say that planes won't fly and drugs won't be sold. And that is complete nonsense. We've heard from leading figures in the airline. They're still selling tickets for flights between London and continental destinations after the 29th of March, and that isn't a fraudulent exercise. It's because those airlines all rightly believe those flights will be running. And of course we'll be buying medicines from the continent, and we have no wish, surely, as a country or government, to impose new barriers to stop medicines coming in that are safe today and will be safe the day after
we've got some sense.
We have left the European Union.
I mean, there's obviously going to be a breadth in these papers, and we're going to pick through them as they come up, but we've already got some sense. And I think in terms of Northern Ireland and its electricity supply, we were reading today that barges with generators may have to be positioned offshore to make sure that electricity is continually supplied to Northern Ireland. It is going to worry people, to say the very least.
Well, that kind of statement would, but the Republic of Ireland has legal contractual obligations to supply power and will want to do so because they need the money and they need to keep their generators working. So these people who seem to think the EU is suddenly going to become some kind of Napoleonic blockade against the UK economy and declare economic war have a very low view of the European Union and also don't understand that both the EU and we will be completely governed by World Trade Organization rules. This is not a no-deal trade arrangement.
Okay.
We will both be governed by the WTO. It's written into the EU treaties, I'm pleased to say, as well as into international law, and that works fine for the bulk of our trade today, which is not with the EU. And if that's how we have to conduct our trade with the EU, that will work fine
WTO
as well.
Will be fine. OK, can I just ask you, while you're with me, about this campaign for Conservative democracy and their desire to change the election rules for a leader in the Conservative Party to mean you get on the ballot if you get nominated by just 20 MPs. Is that something you support?
It's not something I've offered public support for, but it's an interesting idea. I'm certainly delighted that lots of people are now joining the Conservative Party because they find our debates on Brexit very worthwhile, and it's very good to know that a lot of people who voted Leave want us to deliver a good Brexit.
Changing the rules for getting on the ballot
and they obviously
paper.
Want to make sure their voice is heard when they join.
You could see a list of names on the ballot paper rather than the final two.
Well, I think that's an interesting idea, but no, I haven't come out in public support of that.
OK, well, let us know when you do, or if you do. John Redwood, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's bring in the Labour MP and Remain supporter, Stella Creasy. Very good to see you, Ms Creasy. Tell me whether you think it's a valuable exercise publishing these papers.
I think, sadly, it's a necessary exercise because I listen to people like John Cavalieri saying somehow that it would be great if we leave the European Union with no deal. And I think people deserve the truth about what that might actually mean. The stockpiling of medicines, the closures of motorways so they can be lorry parks, the suggestion that we won't be able to get planes to fly. All of these, it's not Project Fear anymore, it's brutal reality, and people have a right to know that that is what's being proposed.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a bit the reverse of what I was asking John Redwood. You know, do you think that really would happen? It's very much, it's beyond worst case scenario, isn't it? I mean,
come on, this is the challenge though, isn't it, Dermot? They can't rule it out, and we're now, what, a few weeks away from the idea that we need to at least have some kind of deal. No consensus in Parliament that anybody thinks this deal is going to be any good for Britain, whether they were strong Leave or strong Remain people. It's a mess. And in that instance, people like me are saying, look, politicians clearly can't sort this out. Let's get the public in.
Well, do you think it's going to shift public opinion? I mean, you're secretly pleased, aren't you, when you start reading stories like this? No, you are. Because then you're seeing moves in public opinion, aren't we? We're seeing bit by bit, though, the proportion that think it was a mistake, the proportion that would vote Remain.
Do I want to see... I mean, we import...
Would you like to see public opinion change?
We import 50% of our food, right, of which the vast majority of that is from the EU. Do I want to see people not being able to eat?
No, not to see it happen, but to see these papers saying it might happen.
Don't tell me that I'm pleased. No, I'm horrified. And I'm horrified that people like John simply think that that's a price worth paying for their fantasies about what a modern trading relationship should look like. Please don't accuse me of being excited by this.
Well, please don't accuse me of accusing you, because what I was saying, you're pleased about the papers being published, because then that might shift public opinion. You might get that second referendum before...
I have every confidence in the British public that they're not daft, and that if they see what is being proposed, they will understand why many of us have been so concerned about this for some time. But do you know what? Whether people voted Leave or Remain, to think that they now need a say on what's being put in front of them is an entirely fair proposition. Because if John is right, and he's got a great view about World Trade Organisations and all the tariffs that come with that, he can make that argument. And if I'm right, that we are better off saying, actually, this isn't a good deal for Britain, then we can have that debate too. So whether you voted Leave or Remain, the People's Vote argument is incontrovertibly the right thing to do.
Good to see you. Stella Creasy, thank you very much indeed.